and welcome back to another episode of Church is Stupid.
Comma butt.
I'm Ruth.
I'm Kate.
I'm Elijah.
And this is us. I just messed that up.
It's a good show.
It is a good show. I like that show.
Yeah.
So, today we get to have a little bit more fun than I think, well, I was going to say than we normally have on the podcast, but we have
a lot of fun.
It's a more of a light topic, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the topic of Christian dating. Aww.
I don't know why, but I wanted to go bum bum bum.
Yeah, that's probably more accurate.
Well, I mean.
And so exploring this topic is definitely an interesting one. And in preparation for said topic, we might have had a certain member of the podcast sign up for a certain app or two to help us out. I don't know who that was, Elijah.
That'd be pretty weird, huh?
It was not Tinder. Just gotta put that one out there.
Thanks, Kate.
I've gotten asked that multiple times.
And we have a special guest joining us not today, but on Thursday, which is tragically my brother. So
There's stories.
talking about Christian dating with my brother is going to be super fun, guys. I'm real excited.
Whoop whoop.
So
Ruth had a very dead eye stare after that.
it's true because I died a little inside.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so yeah, this is something. Man, there's some really weird rules with Christian dating that you just don't deal with if you're not a Christian, I feel like.
Well, as Christians, Ruth, as I'm sure you know, we don't date, we court.
You should not have said that right when you took a sip of first soda.
No, the worst part is, Kate, that I've heard that
Yeah.
so many
courting.
times.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Especially, so, me and Elijah met at a Christian college. And when we met, I was fresh off of a breakup of an engagement. And so, yes, he was actually supposed to be a guest at our wedding. How's that for weird? You're
It
welcome.
is, yeah.
But I didn't know you yet. So it
No,
wasn't like you
not
were
at
our
all.
guest. It was just he was really good friends
Through-
with one of our friends.
Yeah,
and-
like through friend networks, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a weird way of putting
So anyhow, weird random side story. But yes, I had multiple friends tell me that they were not dating. They were courting. Because courting is the proper Christian way to date. Now, I don't know what the difference is,
it.
personally.
I was going to say, Ruth, why don't you tell us what they claim courting is versus dating? Because I don't know.
I don't know, Christian versus not.
Oh.
I couldn't tell you. I think courting is intentionally trying to win with chivalry at the heart of what you're doing. Which
Are you like a peacock or
literally,
something?
literally, it's so funny because there's actually the married apartments on Spring Harbor's campus are the place you want to avoid like the plague, because yeah, so that's what Christian courting gets you. So,
It's literally, it really is just like a dumber version of dating, according to
It's like there's more rules involved.
Well, so Oxford defines courting. Everyone's favorite segment on this podcast.
oh, sorry, let me put
To
my
be
pinky
involved
up
with
my throat.
romantically, typically with the intention of marrying. Okay?
What's dating then?
I don't know, it's worldly, I guess, instead of sacred.
There's no intention to marry.
He said with
dating.
incredible sarcasm, please understand.
And I think people mean well, because I think really what they're trying to say is like, we want to be intentional with how we're dating, but sometimes those semantic things can get really interesting. I think one of my favorite dating stories is that that verse in the Bible that's don't be unequally yoked. Have you heard that in relation to dating?
No.
I think I might, it sounds like a familiar thing.
Particularly, it was used for Christians, or like parents to say to Christians where their children were dating somebody or interested in somebody who wasn't Christian, right? And so,
Yes.
don't be unequally yoked.
Oh gosh. Yes.
That's how the verse has been used in my.
Yes, no.
And-
You have brought back memories. Yes.
Did I? They seem like good ones.
No, in the context of what you're saying, yeah, like it all came back.
You're welcome. I'm more than happy to provide good memories here at Church is Stupid, comma, but. So in this particular verse, it's actually really, really funny because the first missionary movement, they actually encouraged Christians to get married to non-Christians because, I'm not saying this is necessarily a good thing, just saying this is how it was, because they wanted them to be able to convert their children and spread the gospel that way. So you were encouraged to take a non-Christian as a spouse.
Take one for the team.
And then force your children to be
and then
Christians.
fix her, right?
Pretty much. Yeah, that was kind of like how it was. And that was how Christianity spread. And it wouldn't have gotten as far as it did without that particular movement. That's a whole weird thing. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, it's just some fun backstory for you.
Yeah. Fun is a word that I wouldn't maybe not necessarily use, but in this situation,
it's a word.
It is a word.
I think it's interesting to me because one of the things that Christians really, really hate to talk about is sex, right? There's just everyone gets awkward and they're like, the church can't talk about sex. Gross. And what it's led to is sort of this mentality amongst, basically Christian people who get married, where once they get married, they feel guilty still having sex. They're like, they can't seem to reconcile it as being okay then. And that's one really bad thing that we've been doing about teaching Christian dating is like this idea sex is, and even the ones where it's like, sex isn't bad, just you will burn if you ever have sex outside of marriage and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It makes it a very traumatic experience with Christians and sex.
I want those people to explain the Christian families with like 10 kids, all biological. Explain that one then. No twins or anything.
So
I can.
Please don't.
But there are some sects of Christianity that believe birth control is wrong. And as a result, that's why there are certain stereotypes associated with certain denominations about having particularly large families. Because it is technically against their faith to have or to take any form of birth control.
Is that the idea that you're going against the idea of procreation, which
it's kind of a twofold because one of the first mandates that God gives us when we were created is go forth and multiply.
Yeah.
So there's that one, and then there's also the idea of you're interfering with God's plan.
Right.
So the way around it, which has been it's quite ironic, I guess, is called natural family planning, in which you just avoid having sex when the girl is ovulating. And
it doesn't always work.
Well, no, it doesn't always work, but that's why it's not technically considered birth control. But it's always been kind of funny to me because I'm like, but you're still trying to control it. It's just a different way. That's less.
I feel like it's more effort to do that as well.
Anyhow, it's just one of those weird things. But it's definitely something that, having lived on a Christian campus, I can honestly say that those mentalities do not lead to less sex.
No. No. I don't.
Just leads to it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's.
And I think this is where we'll maybe get too blunt for a podcast episode, but it's fine. We're always blunt. I think me and Elijah are in the minority where we are each other's only, and that's something that I'm very proud of. You're welcome, Kate. I'm sure you wanted to know.
Totally
that.
needed
Kate's
to know
like,
that.
This is all payback for what I have to hear from Sam later.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
And I think that's kind of the minority amongst the people that I knew.
Yeah, I'd probably agree. Yeah.
So Christian dating it's just a very interesting thing. And so some of the funnier parts of it are Ring by Spring. Do you know what Ring by Spring is?
Oh, heck yeah.
Ring by Spring.
The MRS degree.
Yes, it is the MRS degree.
You good over there?
No, I'm just. I remember hearing it, but I for a little bit of context, I met Ruth at the Christian college, but I only went there for 1 year. So I only got to experience that culture in all of its glory for a year.
There's also the freshman frenzy.
Yeah.
You've never heard of freshman
I've
frenzy?
like heard of it, but I'm not like aware of it, I guess.
So freshman frenzy at college is when you literally within like the first 3 weeks, couples have just paired up and they're dating and they're like super in love and then they break up like 2 minutes later. But
Definitely saw some of that. Yeah.
yes.
Definitely saw some of that.
I definitely participated in some of that. So I can't say anything. But Ring by Spring is also this idea that once you start dating, by the next spring you're supposed to be engaged, basically. And it's really, really prominent in Christian schools because they don't think they can have sex until marriage, and therefore they want to have sex, and they get engaged quickly, and that is why we avoid the marriage apartments on campus.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of where that mentality comes from. All of this to say there's a lot of like, I don't know, I feel like non-Christians don't deal with some of that weird stigma when it comes to dating. Is that fair to say?
It's not like I can necessarily talk as someone who wasn't raised as a Christian for all their life, but I mean, my base assumption is, yeah, it's like this. It's almost like that that meme from that scene from the Babadook movie where the mom's looking at her kid and just screaming, "Why can't you just be normal?" And the kid's just screaming for no reason. I feel like that's people talking about Christian dating because we have all these like different expectations and all these like workaround things to get around like what we're told is sin and what we're told is like improper dating, and we have all these weird terms called courting, which doesn't really mean anything in the 21st century to me, and Ring by Spring and all these things where I feel like people who are outside of Christianity sort of look at us like, what's going on over there? Like, are you guys okay? Like, you don't just like date? I feel like it is something that Christians sort of deal with in their own bubble in their own way.
Yeah, I'll say. Okay. I'll say for me, so I went to a Baptist private school through 8th grade, so it was like for like 11 years or something. It was a long time. And so by the time we were in 8th grade, people were, dating each other, and we were seeing the high schoolers. Some of my classmates were dating and stuff like that. But it was just really very interesting because we always, in the lunch area, we were in the gymnasium, but we had this one teacher who, if you were like even standing like close to each other, he would come over and like separate you. It was just very like you couldn't like even be like
make room for Jesus.
Yeah, like yeah. So like they were standing next to I just remember there was this one day, these two people that were dating were standing next to the microwave. They were talking, and this one teacher came up and was like, "Yeah, you guys need to like take a step apart from each other or something, like not touching or anything, but just standing there." And it's also really weird because like. It's weird for me to think that I'm at the age where I could theoretically get married, but like there's people that are like only a couple years older than me, and I've seen their like wedding photos on Facebook. Very weird. Very weird.
Wait till you're looking at 4 years of marriage with 5th coming down quickly on your second kid, man. Just wait. Just you wait. I'm how much old? I'm 10 years older than you?
Yeah.
10 years, Kate. Look at your future.
Oh my gosh.
I'm screwed.
I'm just teasing. No, well, actually, to terrify you slightly more, I was engaged by the time I was 19.
Okay, so I'm not talking to dudes for the next 2 months.
Yeah, it's probably smart.
Moral of the story there. Okay.
That marriage did not happen.
Yeah.
Obviously. But, it is kind of terrifying.
I will say, I did have a dude propose to me once. With a ring pop.
You missed your chance.
I mean, it was 8th grade science
practically
class.
An old maid now, so good luck with that.
That was God, and you rejected him. Oh.
I can't even talk anymore.
I hope that I don't need to elaborate. That was probably not God telling you to get married in 8th grade.
Somewhere. Someone believed it was.
Oh, no.
So, Yeah. I do think when it comes to, just like when it comes to doing anything as a Christian, there are certain things that really, like, dating just to use people, probably not great.
No.
Like, obviously, as a Christian, I think it's important that however you decide to date, you're doing it in a respectful manner, that we're trying to be conscientious of the other person's feelings as well as your own. And I think that's really, I mean, it's that love your neighbor as yourself type situation. That should permeate into all of our relationships. And that includes dating. And as for some of that other stuff, you know, we're just not going to get into it today.
I will say one thing about like thinking about whoever like the other person in the relationship's feelings are. You do it like it's also important to like really keep in mind how you're feeling. So like you can't think about their feelings so much to the detriment of yourself. I feel like that's a real issue that sometimes people get into.
Oh yeah, well, and I had a friend in high school one time who was dating a guy that she wasn't really that into. But she said, well, as a Christian, shouldn't I be able to love anybody and make it work with anybody? And so she didn't want to break up with them because she felt like it was unchristian. Please break up with people if you need to. Yeah. It doesn't always, you know, that's one of the reasons why dating is you know, so important. I take, you know, marriage covenant and all of that very seriously, as much as I might joke about divorce with Elijah. We both went into this, and that was it. We stated we don't believe in divorce. That's something that's very important and a solid part of our marriage is that's not something we see as a possibility, barring unless one of us, of course, cheated and or got physical with the other person, or their children. But we know each other well enough to know that won't happen. I hope this isn't one of those. You're really
convincing the audience right now, Ruth, that you are happy. You're doing a really good job right now.
Like, what was it we talked about last week? Marriage is the worst thing ever. You hate your spouse.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
But no, I think there are some standards that we can look to, and really looking at the standards for dating in the Bible is really hard because there's not really dating in the Bible. Like the closest you might be able to come is when Jacob was working the 7 years to try to marry the one daughter, and then all of a sudden
that's not the greatest example.
Yeah, it's not a great example. Like the Levitical laws about marriage are really not great at all. The biblical laws about marriage aren't really that great at all. Like a lot of those things, one, value women as less.
Yeah.
Like literally, there are Levitical laws that say if you kill a daughter, you pay $200 versus killing a son, you pay like $800. Like, that's obviously me just assigning random numbers, but that's in Levitical law. And there were rules that if a man were to go after a woman without her consent and rape her, that they would then have to take that woman as their wife. So, great examples of what biblical
women were not really valued in the same way that they are today.
Well, and that's why I
just
think
putting it plainly.
Well, and I think that's why it's important for us to look at some of that stuff contextually, and some of that, and really take what are the important things that we can learn about how God wants us to treat one another and how God wants us to treat like a spouse or somebody that we're dating. And I think that comes with a lot of the New Testament and reading about how the church is supposed to be like Christ's bride, and that those kinds of analogies, we start to understand a little bit more of what that is. And those relationships, the one, you know, and I'm talking about dating in terms of finding one's ultimate spouse, but some people don't date that way. Yeah. Some people date to see what or who they're interested in.
Yeah.
And I think that that's okay as well, as long as you are very upfront about that, you know?
Yeah.
To me, it's all about communication and, again, respect for the other person.
Yeah, it's still even now kind of hard to like really define, I don't know, what Christian dating is or isn't and what it should or shouldn't be, because I don't know, I feel like the ideas of dating, like when you're growing up, especially, you know, in a Christian household or not, like you start to develop your own sort of idea of like what dating is based on what's happening around you and you know, what you're taught when you're young. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like just the way that you sort of date is just derivative of how, you know, the way that you sort of like view yourself and view others. I don't, I feel like there's a lot of really like specific examples or of like what you should or shouldn't do that are kind of taught in certain Christian households. And I've seen, you know, it's very, I think it's one of those things that's very it's varied in a lot of different Christian households. When I was growing up, I was told that like you don't date until you're 18. That's how I grew up. And I did sort of date a few people before I was 18. And they weren't, I mean, I clearly had no idea what I was doing, and I was doing it out of respect just because you don't really control who you like and don't like when, you know, you're that age or really at any time. But, you know, not every Christian household is like that. A lot of Christian families that I know, like their kids in school would also date, and they were just, and that most of them, or I hope most of them, you know, they were just told to be respectful, and they understood what the idea of dating was in their household, and you know, they were still probably told that like, hey, you should probably wait until marriage before, you know, you get in bed with someone. But it's pretty different. It's varied. I don't think that it's as concrete as some people may realize in Christian households.
And there are some people who are very adamant about needing to live together before they get married to try it out.
Yeah.
There's some people who are very adamant against people living together
right.
before they are married. I think that's something that, one, if you look at the statistics, it actually does prove to be slightly more beneficial and healthier for your marriage to not live together before you're married, which is sort of random and weird, but also true. But regardless, I think you're right. There's a lot of cultural things that come with dating as well. Yeah. Even Christian dating over time, over different places. And sometimes we forget that because we like to think we always have the right idea of everything. And I don't know. There's a lot that can play into Christian dating. And I think the one thing that I would really like to impose upon people when it comes to Christian dating is that it's not permanent. Dating is dating for a reason.
Right.
You're not married. It's okay. You know, we talk a lot about once you get married, and it's important to be loyal and to not just like, you know, do everything on a whim, I guess.
Yeah.
But also, you're dating. Like, you don't have to stay with them because you feel like you need to be loyal. And I feel like a lot of Christians make that mistake. You know what I mean? Like, they feel guilty over breaking up with people for that reason.
I understand what you're saying by that. You mean you shouldn't stay with someone, you shouldn't feel like you have to because you need to be loyal. Yeah. You probably shouldn't cheat on whoever you're with because you don't think that we're loyal.
Stay loyal.
Okay,
but I understand
that's what I meant. Yeah, no, not encouraging cheating. Please don't cheat. Cheating is bad. Oh gosh. I'm gonna get some phone calls.
I know what you meant, and I'm sure that most people did, but sometimes, you know, again, this is one of those things where like a lot of people like expect, or a lot of people are told very, very specific pieces of advice, like by their parents or by their peers, you know. So it's when it comes to Christian dating or dating at all. But I get what you're saying.
Thank you for clarifying that, because that would have been real interesting. That was not what I meant.
Yeah, no, Pastor Ruth told me to cheat on you. Sorry.
Pastor Ruth said I don't have to be loyal.
Yeah.
But
no. I just meant don't stay with someone just because you feel like you have to. But if you don't want to be with that person, don't cheat. Break up with them for Pete's sake. Have the decency to end it.
Absolutely.
Like, that's just, again, that comes down to the respecting one another. And a lot of those cultural things, or even the things that are taught to us about the biblical ways of dating, are intended to teach us how to respect one another. Mm-hmm. For instance, waiting to have sex until you're married. There's a lot of emotional connection that comes with having sex with somebody. Mm-hmm. And you're not always, you know, it's, as someone once explained to me, you're not really supposed to go back, right? Like, once you start, you're not really supposed to stop. hence
Right.
marriage.
Yeah.
And it becomes significantly more difficult, like, for coping with that if you have had that in your relationship. For anybody, and that's true of however far you go or whatever, but everyone draws those lines differently. Some couples don't think you should even kiss before you get married.
Yeah.
And some think you should do all of it before you get married. It's just very interesting, and I think God really does care about that aspect of our lives. You know, sometimes, again, we don't like to talk about sex and things like that, but I do think God does care.
Yeah.
Just like God cares about every part of our lives. And again, we really have to be looking at how we can respect our partners. And that to me is one of the keys of being in a relationship, whether you're a Christian or not. You know, I've met some non-Christians who are much better at dating people than Christians. And
I've met some non-Christians who have the most amazing, respectful marriage. And then I've met some Christians who I swear hate each other and are married to one another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like that happens again a lot because of that pressure to get married so they can have sex.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that, like,
together or something
I'm
like that.
shocked that non-Christians are happy with one another. I'm not saying it like that. I mean, if
No.
we're talking about the ways that a lot of Christians say that, like, you know, their marriage should be or is, it's ironic because I see a lot of Christians who say that kind of thing and are woefully unhappily married to one another.
Very true.
It's probably not the hardest thing to find. But I think culture changes, and the ideas around, you know, like datings have changed in the Christian space especially. And, you know, there's always been a lot of certain expectations in Christian dating that have this kind of idea of, like, conformity. And I think people sometimes get the wrong idea when they hear the word sacrifice when it comes to things like that too, because sacrificing, you hear things a lot in Christian dating too, like sacrificing parts of yourself to almost like make someone else happy. And I think that the idea of sacrificing for another person is a beautiful and amazing thing, and it's healthy. But, you know, when you're like a kid and you're being taught things sort of like that, and it's not really explained exactly what that is, you can get sort of an idea in your head that, like, you are supposed to be unhappy in a relationship.
And what you're sacrificing for the other person should also be really talked about more.
Yeah, and but it's really not.
Between, like, oh, hey, I don't like football, but I'm willing to watch it with you, and I hate everything fundamentally about you, but I'm going to stay with you because I'm sacrificing for you.
Right.
They're
right.
very different, and those sound like, super extreme examples, but can you point to one definitive, really, like, in the middle of where you can draw that line between what is acceptable and what isn't?
Yeah.
I think that that's something that really should be talked about as well amongst parents and you know, the Christian family, the church as well. But
yeah. Well, I think.
Sorry, I thought that was a good point.
No, it's very good. To sort of wrap things up, I don't know. It's a weird thing to talk about in any definitive sense, because a lot of this stuff isn't as definitive as Christians would have it seem. But I think that the most beautiful, healthy, Christ-like relationships are ones that come out of two people who truly love and respect themselves and love and respect one another. People who understand what a relationship, a healthy, respectful, honest relationship is, who want to offer that and share that with another person.
Absolutely.
And I think that all these other things sort of not necessarily fall to the wayside, like all these other things we talk about aren't involved, but I think that those things blossom and come out of relationships where those more simple, important things are like the core of it and take the forefront. Relationships that center around respect and, you know, understanding one another and being honest with each other. And I don't know. I think there's like core values that sometimes that we talk about in regards to being Christ-like all the time, that we know, and that we say that we, that's important to us, and that we say that we follow. And then sometimes when we relay that to dating, we almost like lose focus of like just the simple main things about being a decent human being to one another, because I think that's one of the most important things, if not the most important thing in like a relationship, is understanding the way that we believe Christ loves you and other people, and applying that to being with another person.
And so we have reached the end of this first episode of the week, but one thing we will be touching on next week then is one of the biggest ways in which dating has changed, which is internet dating, all the way to dating apps and their glorious
It's still this
fun.
week, but
It is. Did I say next week?
you said next week.
It's fine. I always say next week.
Next episode this week.
Episode on Thursday. And so tune in on Thursday at 5 to hear us delve into Kate's love life, because me and Elijah are clearly an old married couple by this point. And so, yes, tune in next week. From all of us here. That's real awkward. It's fine. It's fine. After talking about
Hey, we've had worse endings, okay? We've had worse.
Maybe not. From all of us here at Church is Stupid,
Comma, but
I'm Ruth,
I'm Kate.
I'm Elijah.
and we hope you have a great week.